If I were to ask 100 people which Metal Gear Solid game was their favorite, what do you think they would say? I can confidently assume that most people would probably say the original for popularizing stealth, formally introducing the world of Metal Gear, and the groundbreaking narrative. And there's probably even more people that love Metal Gear Solid 3 for its self-contained plot, robust healing system, sandbox approach to combat, the orchestral score, and finally introducing a proper camera. And while both of these games are legendary classics and some of the most influential games of all time, my personal favorite, without hesitation, is Metal Gear Solid 2. As a matter of fact, I'll go one step further and call it one of my favorite pieces of media ever created. MGS2, Metal Gear Solid 2 for short, joins the ranks of Dark Souls, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, BioShock, Watchmen, Blade Runner, and 5 centimeters per second as formative pieces I experienced, changing the way I engage with media. MGS2 is typically referred to as the black sheep of the series with fans. Players felt betrayed by not playing as Snake, didn't enjoy Raiden, and the existential meta-narrative about the information age probably didn't resonate well in 2001. Now, there are certainly plenty of other reasons players have for disliking this game, which is probably why Kojima and team course-corrected so hard with MGS3 and 4 to an extent. However, if we take a step back and look at this game in 2024, this game serves as a cautionary tale for the information age, the threat of misinformation, the overabundance of media to consume, and many other increasingly relevant existential threats. The nature of this narrative will only become more relevant as time passes, but that's enough of the preamble. Sit back, grab a drink or a meal like I usually do during one of these videos, and let's dive into why I believe Metal Gear Solid 2 is Hideo Kojima's magnum opus. The best place to begin is with the development history. Following the monumental success of Metal Gear Solid 1, Konami expected series creator Hideo Kojima to reinvent the stealth genre again with the sequel. Finding developer diaries or production documentaries were fairly challenging, but what I could find were the design documents Kojima finished in 1999 before entering the production phase of the game. These documents serve as MGS2's blueprint by outlining the overarching production goals while breaking them out into smaller initiatives for his team to achieve. A few takeaways that actually astonished me was how Kojima designed Raiden as the antithesis to Snake, how Raiden was created to directly appeal to the female demographic, how he utilized the PS2's hardware to create 3D levels for players to have more vertical engagements, plans for improving enemy AI, the interactive environments, and creating as many real-time light and shadows for the AI and players to interact with. I'm only scratching the surface here, and I highly recommend aspiring game developers, producers, and artists to read this. I could probably dedicate an entire video to analyzing this document, so let's keep going and discuss how Kojima leveraged the game's marketing campaign to convey one of the game's key themes. Now, if you haven't played MGS2 and you're still watching, which, hey, I appreciate you, you're probably asking yourself, marketing? Why are we talking about marketing? Well, Kojima and Konami had agreed to a risk that at the time was probably horrifying for them. When the game was revealed and marketed before it released, Konami only showed us Snake. Now, this wasn't anything too crazy at the time because Snake was the hero of Shadow Moses, the character everybody played in the prequel, and the evolving face of Konami at the time. This is still good branding and there's nothing wrong with this, right? Well, sure, but after completing the tanker section of the game, you play as Raiden, and you're probably thinking to yourself, this guy's alright, but we're Snake. And when you eventually meet Pliskin and progress through the game, some players at the time were undoubtedly frustrated for not playing as the character that was in all of the marketing material. It also didn't help that they marketed the entirety of the game with Snake in it. The game obviously sold well and reviewed well critically, but Konami agreeing to marketing the game like this was very ambitious. However, when you pick up the game in 2024, things are a bit different. Most people are aware of this as it's widely discussed in gaming today, and Konami has Raiden front and center in the Master Collection's promotional material. I can't imagine experiencing this twist because I first played the game when I was 14 or 15 back in 2011. Being a kid or a young adult and experiencing this with your friends must have been so crazy, especially with how Snake almost taunts his presence throughout the game. This would be one of the many risks Kojima took with the sequel, but we're starting to get ahead of ourselves. So let's spend some time talking about the graphical facelift and presentation upgrade MGS2 received from its predecessor. While the last 3 console generations haven't been huge technical leaps, the jump from the PS1 to the PS2 was colossal. When looking at MGS1 and MGS2 side by side, it's night and day. MGS2 introduces reflections, more detailed models with eyes and moving mouths, introduced physics on various objects, fully realized 3D levels, updated light and shadows with real-time rendering, and so many other changes modernizing pain points from the original. The updated graphics would also help players get more immersed in the world and with the characters, as their models had much more detail than their blocky MGS1 counterparts. Another clear upgrade from the original was with the overall presentation. MGS boasts incredible cinematography with its cutscenes when characters are physically speaking. Kojima's love of film shines through each shot's composition when admiring the backgrounds, choice of angles, and unique shot selections invoking certain emotions during these cutscenes. Now, I'm not a student of film, but I can say that each of these shots are deliberately chosen to do something. Each cutscene, and oh boy are there a lot, is well shot and carries its own identity 20 years later. The other atmosphere enhancing element is Harry Gregson Williams' outstanding soundtrack accompanying this gorgeous presentation. MGS2's soundtrack, in my opinion at least, beautifully sets the tone of all the scenes, enhances the overall atmosphere, and adds additional context to pivotal scenes. Nevertheless, the nature of music is very subjective, and I'm sure everyone has a favorite. While I love his work on the MGS2 soundtrack, others may prefer MGS1 or MGS3 scores instead. Again, it's one of these highly subjective things that will resonate with everyone differently. However, one of the things that are less subjective that we can all probably agree on are the clear gameplay enhancements from the original. Alright, if I were to dissect the gameplay on its own in 2024, this game would look old and antiquated when compared to more modern entries. The best way I could think of highlighting the volume of new additions is listing them off here. MGS1 found players snapping soldiers' necks, shooting guards, throwing things, hugging a wall, knocking on walls, crawling through areas, and looking directly in front of them. MGS2, by comparison, kept everything from the original while adding a roll button, a roll into prone functionality, choking out guards, the ability to drag and hide bodies, leaning and shooting around corners, first-person aiming, a tranquilizer pistol, the ability to shoot out lights, new weapons, better audio, more dynamic environments, more vertical engagements with 3D environments, analog controller support to enhance 3D movement, the ability to properly walk, holding up enemies, collecting dog tags, more game unlockable content, more intelligent AI, and probably more subtle changes. So, not to make a statement of the obvious here, but this was an enormous upgrade from the original. MGS2's updates not only modernized the MGS series in 2001, but Kojima, again, fundamentally pushed the entire stealth genre forward with these groundbreaking additions to his already robust gameplay system. However, as I stated earlier, MGS2's age begins to show when you revisit it and compare it to some more modern entries in the series. I remember getting the MGS HD collection as a teen and getting frustrated with the controls. My tolerance for older control schemes and older media has gotten better with age, but it's important to remember that MGS2 is a game from the 7th generation. While the 6th generation was known for pioneering 3D movement and 3D camera controls, the later half of the 7th generation was when 3D movement, cameras, control schemes, and other foundational systems were solidified and streamlined across the gaming medium. And unfortunately, MGS2 suffers from being released early in the PS2's lifecycle. MGS2 employs pressure-sensitive buttons to aim and shoot your gun. If you lightly press square or X, the gun will aim and you will shoot if you firmly press the button. Let me read that back again really slowly. Lightly press to aim and firmly press to shoot. Pressing the X or the A button to crouch and go prone and not being able to crouch walk was jarring as well, to say the least. I remember thinking this game was awful when I was younger until realizing that I could just quick swap weapons and that fixed almost all my problems. Until the camera angle changed. So, for those who've seen my Resident Evil analysis, feel free to check it out if you're curious. You know that I have a dedicated portion of that video discussing the ramifications of fixed camera angles. The Cliff Notes version of my thoughts are fixed camera angles are fine as long as they fit two criteria. Criteria number 1, the game must use tank controls. Criteria number 2, the fixed camera angles are deliberate and synergizes with the game's overall design. Resident Evil uses the camera to make players feel claustrophobic and deliberately hide enemies. Combine this with the deliberately slow enemies and you have a functioning gameplay loop that feels fun to play. MGS2, by comparison, struggles to justify its camera's existence. The camera angles you get are just kind of random. They feel like more of a relic of the PS1 generation more than anything else. The camera angles show too much or too little and run the risk of frustrating players when you can't see what's directly in front of you. Combine this with the lack of tank controls, faster moving enemies, and the more intelligent AI, and you might get frustrated when you're discovered by an enemy that you can't even see. The last controversial opinion I'll probably have is with the Soliton radar. I'm sure fans of the game and franchise have been wondering, where's the radar? Well, honestly, I think the game is much better when it's turned off. The Soliton radar is such a powerful tool that all players at some point probably have their eyes darting from here to here and back to here again throughout the entirety of the game. This was me until I decided to play the game without the Soliton radar. And yes, I was found more, died more frequently, and had less fun until I realized that I wasn't properly using the mechanics. Without the radar, players are forced to scan their surroundings more frequently, lean around corners to gain information, better understand NPC pathing and movement, listen for footsteps. It forces you to engage with more vertical level design, allows players to get immersed in the game, and forces players to interact with MGS2's mostly refined mechanics. Before we shift towards the story and theme discussion, I want to make it abundantly clear that I love the gameplay of MGS2. I know that I just dedicated a page to criticizing the gameplay, but there's a lot to love with the gameplay if you're willing to explore the mechanics and get comfortable with the controls. Then again, this game is 23 years old as of this recording, and the sequel irons out all of my problems while introducing new ones. And while the gameplay has been enhanced with its successors, the story and themes discussed throughout the plot have yet to be matched in my opinion. Before diving into the story, I'd like to remind everyone that if you're enjoying this video, a subscription and a like would go a far way in helping the channel grow. Thanks for your support, and back to the video. Alright, so to preface this section of the video, I'd like to make one thing abundantly clear. MGS2, like Watchmen, is a thematically and philosophically dense piece of media tackling postmodernism, free will, AI, social engineering, and memetics, to name a few. Pieces of media like this challenge people's ideologies and are meant to serve as a platform for discussion. So I'd love to hear everyone's perspectives and interpretations in the comments. With that lengthy preamble out of the way, I'm assuming that if you're still here, you've played the game, so let's quickly discuss the plot, a few characters with excellent writing I'd like to call out, and some of the themes that I picked up on. MGS2 follows the events of MGS1 with Snake and Otacon following up a lead about the US Marine Corps developing an anti-Metal Gear. After Snake lands on the tanker and debriefs Otacon, he watches a group of Russians hijack the tanker. Otacon reminds Snake that his objective is to simply document proof of the new Metal Gear and escape with evidence. While searching the tanker, he dismantles Olga Gurlukovich and sneaks through some guards before stumbling across Metal Gear Ray. After taking some pictures and uploading them to Otacon, Ocelot and Sergei take over the Marine speech. Ocelot kills Sergei, blows up part of the tanker. Liquid, the antagonist from the first game, takes over Ocelot's body and escapes with Metal Gear Ray after splitting the tanker in half, leaving Snake to die. 2 years after the incident, the US had developed the Big Shell to clean up the tanker's wreckage, which created a huge environmental issue. However, the Big Shell was taken over by a group named Dead Cell, who was holding the president and other hostages up for ransom. As a result, the US employs Raiden, Roy Campbell, and Rose to rescue the hostages and escape. As Raiden progresses through the Big Shell, he encounters a blood-sucking member of Dead Cell named Vamp, meets Iroquois Pliskin, disarms a few bombs, fights some bosses, and begins to lose trust in his support team as he feels like they're keeping information from him. Because of this, he begins building a relationship with Iroquois Pliskin, which is clearly Snake, and Otacon because they're honest with him. After crossing the bridge and approaching the Second Corps, you meet the president, and he tells you about the Patriots, a shadowy group controlling Capitol Hill, the military, and the economy. When the president finishes debriefing Raiden on how much the Patriots control, he tells him that the Big Shell was a front for the Patriots to build a new Metal Gear called Arsenal Gear. Arsenal Gear is described as a fortress carrying nukes and missiles protected by Metal Gear Rays, which has complete control of the military's tactical network. The president then encourages Raiden to find Emma Emmerich, Otacon's sister, as she's the main programmer that can shut down Arsenal Gear. After this lengthy conversation, the president begs Raiden to kill him. He refuses. Ocelot kills him and escapes. You explore the flooded basement in search of Emma, have a boss fight with Vamp, locate Emma. She tells Raiden how the Patriots controls the flow of data, what's written in books, articles, and much more than everyone even realizes. After your conversation, Raiden does some pest control and escorts Emma to Strut L, where there's a connecting bridge to the first shell. Raiden and Snake provide sniper cover as Emma crosses the bridge. Vamp appears, gets shot, and provides a deadly blow to Emma. In disbelief, Raiden runs to meet Snake and Otacon in the Shell 1 core. Now, mourning Emma's final minutes, Snake and Raiden fail to shut down Arsenal Gear with Emma's disc and realize that they now need to evacuate. Snake comforts Otacon with a hug, which really shows how close these two are after everything that they've been through, while Otacon escapes. After he leaves, Snake and the ninja that's been helping you throughout the game knocks you out, and Raiden wakes up strapped to a table with Solidus torturing you as he reminds him of his murderous history as Jack the Ripper. Olga, the undercover ninja working with Solidus and Ocelot, tells Raiden that the Patriots have blackmailed her into working with them by abducting her child. She proceeds to tell Raiden that Snake is waiting up ahead in the hangar. Following this, Rose confronts Raiden about his bloody past as he traumatically recalls his experience with her. After this conversation, Raiden escapes. His entire support team starts tweaking. You meet Snake, who apologizes for using you as bait and gives you a sword as Raiden tells Snake how overwhelmed he is with the Patriots, his dark past, meeting Snake, and everything that's happened to him up to now. Snake implores him to find a reason to keep fighting while Raiden asks Otacon to investigate his support team. After dispatching more soldiers in Arsenal Gear, Otacon reveals to Raiden that his support team has been Patriot-controlled AI inside of Arsenal Gear the entire time. Raiden, unsure what to believe in at this point, pushes forward, incapacitates more soldiers until Fortune, another member of Dead Cell, appears and tries to prevent Snake and Raiden from escaping. Snake decides to provide cover for Raiden as he escapes. After escaping to wherever this is, he fights the Metal Gear Rays, realizes all his actions are meaningless, Olga appears and defends him before giving up, Solidus appears to kill Olga, loses control of his Metal Gears, dismantles a few of them before blaming the Patriots, and Raiden is captured by Solidus again. From here, Raiden wakes up captured on Arsenal Gear. Ocelot reveals all the events that occurred have been part of the S3 plan. The S3 plan was a Patriot-led test to create another Solid Snake through simulating the events of Shadow Moses, which is why MGS2 feels so familiar to MGS1. After revealing this, Ocelot shoots Fortune, boards his Metal Gear to kill everyone, Liquid takes over his body, and escapes with Snake chasing him as Arsenal Gear crashes into Manhattan. When Solidus and Raiden wake up on top of Federal Hall, Solidus tells Raiden he wants to destroy the Patriots so mankind can regain their lost free will. When Solidus is finished, Raiden receives his final codec call from the Patriots saying they've been socially engineering the public for generations through data manipulation and sees themselves as fit to do so. The rationale for acting this way is because mankind is easily distracted by an overabundance of media to consume. With too much information to consume and mankind being easily distracted, the Patriots believe they must filter what information mankind consumes to encourage evolution and prohibit stagnation by preventing mankind from only conversing with like-minded individuals. When the Patriots finish their lengthy soliloquy, Raiden says he won't follow their orders anymore, and so they blackmail Raiden into killing Solidus by threatening to kill Olga's child. In light of this new information, and with Solidus telling Raiden that he's killed his biological parents, Raiden strikes him down, has a talk with Snake about the importance of separating reality from fiction and carving your own path, and the game ends with Raiden holding Rose in his hands. Alright, wow, that was that was a lot, but this game is overwhelming and confusing when you first experience it. Explaining the story over the last 2 pages really takes me back to how confused I was when I first completed the game. Nevertheless, with the plot finally established, let's talk about the characters and writing throughout the story. A great place to begin is by discussing Raiden, Snake, and their relationship. I believe that Raiden is one of the most relatable characters in Metal Gear Solid. The game establishes that he has a strong sense of confidence and trust in his support team, which is on display by him frequently debriefing his team and asking for orders. However, after his team lies to him, constantly withholds information, Solidus forces him to relive his trauma, and coming to grips with the Patriots manufacturing this entire mission, he begins his descent into madness as he's trying to grasp at whatever truth he can find. In his search for truth, he relies on Snake and Otacon to provide him with answers and pave a path forward. The sense of camaraderie and community he builds with them displays how human Raiden actually is. His underlying insecurities, fears, and human reaction to everything occurring makes him more relatable to players than Snake's stoic, battle-hardened approach to the world. As a result of this worldview, Raiden functions as an incredible antithesis to Snake, as he's everything that Snake isn't. Snake in MGS1 was cunning, resourceful, flirtatious, and above all else, confident in his ability. Seeing Raiden's shattered sense of purpose, Snake mentors him through his trauma by teaching him how to seek purpose in life. However, the beauty in their relationship that's rarely discussed is how Raiden mentors Snake as well. Raiden, before everything happened, was much more human and allowed himself to get into a relationship. Snake finds a brother in raising Raiden by passing down his morals to him, while Raiden also shows Snake that there's a life worth living that isn't chained down to destroying Metal Gears, which is eventually reinforced with Big Boss's death at the end of MGS4. As a result, these two almost function as yin and yang and gel very well together throughout the game. And while I would love to end the video here, there's still a lot to dive into with the game's themes. While there are clear loyalty and anti-establishment themes presented, things turn bleak when you realize how close to home MGS's dystopian world Kojima created in 2001 actually is. The President and Solidus realize that mankind cannot control their own fates, as their futures are manufactured while their pasts have been censored or replaced with misinformation. This lack of autonomy and the reality of all of our actions being irrelevant is horrifying and draws parallels to oppressive systems we're forced to operate in today. This is very apparent when discussing the socioeconomic classes we're forced into from birth. From an American perspective, we're included and excluded from certain activities and privileges based on our environment, which is a byproduct of our socioeconomic class. Access to different resources, cultures, and even identities are some of the elements socially manufactured for us. The system goes even further and enforces the relevance of education, jobs, salaries, consumeristic behavior, our future standings, and eventually which morals we pass on to the next generation. These structural systems around us dictate who we are, and in many many ways, assimilate us into functioning how we ought to act instead of how we want to act. Another thought-provoking piece of the narrative Kojima discusses is the relevance of data and information in the 21st century. In 2001, Kojima painted Metal Gear's world as this dystopian future. This world is inhabited by an AI controlling society's flow of information through filtering what data mankind consumes. And while this may have sounded far-fetched 20 years ago, this reality dangerously mirrors society in 2024. When looking at news outlets or algorithms seeking to understand what we desire, AI providing services and functions, and voluntarily existing in echo chambers with like-minded individuals really begins to highlight the uncomfortable parallels between Metal Gear's world and life in 2024. And when the meta-narrative finally resonates with you and you understand what it's saying, MGS2 quietly shifts from this tactical espionage goofy action game into a psychological horror mirroring our modern day world. And honestly, in my opinion at least, this game's existential meta-narrative will continue becoming even more terrifying as time passes. Lastly, the final theme I'd like to dissect is Raiden's free will in this whole thing. When Ocelot tells Raiden the Big Shell incident was designed to manufacture another Solid Snake, and the Patriots told him they've been socially engineering mankind for decades, Raiden questions how much free will he's even exercised in his entire life. Now, just hear me out because what I'm about to say is going to be elite, but like I said, just bear with me. If you really think about it, are we actually that different from Raiden? Honestly, excluding the S3 plant, I don't think we are. Countries and other nations have been built to distribute resources for their citizens, possess some form of underlying economic theory, evolve to sustain dominance, and need to reproduce to preserve their future. As actors in this system, we're locked in this hyper-competitive, productivity-driven mindset, pushing us towards idolizing certain jobs, always aspiring for a promotion, and the need to constantly improve year over year. This obsessive mentality morphs into a cultural mindset, invasively penetrating our perception of fun until inevitably correcting our behavior. For example, have you ever been on a vacation or enjoyed some downtime during your days off and found yourself unable to relax? Maybe you just finished your final exam for the semester and your mind is subconsciously looking for ways to improve already. Or maybe you just got home after a long day of work and can't stop talking about work with your family or significant other. Similar to Raiden, these invasive mentalities fundamentally prohibit our free will through conditioning these behaviors out of us. This reality makes Raiden's internal struggle that much more relatable in my opinion. Alright, so let's bring this full circle by revisiting something I said earlier in this essay. MGS2 is a thematically dense piece of media. Everyone will inevitably engage with this game differently, and I'm sure that I missed a lot because I went to school for econ and not philosophy. So I would love to hear everyone's thoughts on the narrative and what resonated most with you because this game is such a unique experience. When taking a step back and acknowledging what this game accomplishes, it's nothing short of remarkable. Most artists endeavor to create a popular piece of media while competing with themselves to outperform the original. Most artists are scared to deviate from what makes them popular. Most artists are scared to upset their fans, and sometimes most artists don't have any desire to expand on their original vision. And then there's Hideo Kojima, who probably didn't want to make this game, crafted a package which cleverly subverts player expectations, delivers generation-defining graphics, establishes a new standard for the stealth genre, and etches his name alongside George Orwell and Kurt Vonnegut through developing a groundbreaking 21st century narrative exploring themes like free will, postmodernism, and social engineering, as well as serving as a cautionary tale for the information age. Looking back on it, Metal Gear Solid 2 has had quite the roller coaster of emotions since its release. Some fans felt betrayed that they couldn't play as Snake. Others felt disrespected because Konami and Kojima deceived them with their marketing, and some fans were disappointed with the story. However, when we accept the game for what it is rather than what it isn't, and when we revisit the narrative drawing clear parallels to modern society, I personally at least, find it difficult to refer to this game as anything other than Hideo Kojima's magnum opus. Alright, now it's time for the best part of the video, the part that has no editing. But no, all jokes aside, thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. This is probably the most difficult video that I had to make, just for the script and how philosophical and grand and almost existential it was. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, just summing up the events of MGS2 was difficult, so hopefully that came out in a relatively succinct method, as well as some of the other ideas that I had around like the narrative that the game was having, in my opinion at least. So yeah, it was good, and hopefully it helps me with writing future scripts. Other thing that I wanted to update everybody on, if you can, try to keep an eye on the community tab, as well as follow me on Twitter if you want. I mean, they're just great ways to see about like, future videos that I have in the pipeline, other stuff that I'm working on, just, quick, immediate updates. So yeah, don't know how everybody else uses it, but me personally, I think it's a great way to, just kind of keep everybody updated. So that I'm going to make another channel announcement video about this, but I'm probably going to make another channel for streaming because I don't want to like bother you guys with like subscriptions. I don't want to bother you guys as like sub box with just having me at the top if I'm ever streaming like SMT5 or, you know, whatever else I'd like to stream in the future. So yeah, and I think probably being on YouTube would be better than being on Twitch. I don't know about you guys, but like, do you ever just watch a Twitch stream and you're just sitting there like, I can't wait for this 4-minute ad to be over? Yeah, no, we're not gonna do that. So yeah, anyways, back to the video. So you know, how'd you guys, like, I'm very curious about MGS stuff, right? Like, how'd you guys get into the series? Do you still hate MGS2 if you played it back in like 2001 or 2002 when it first came out? Which one's your favorite? What would you like for me to cover next? And probably the single most important thing that I have to add here, the support has been like outlandish, guys. Like, thank you so much. I'm actually a little bit overwhelmed, and I always tell my friends that whenever I told them that like when I got around to making like videos and stuff like that, you know, if I had 10 views, 15, 20, 30, 40 views, that would be enough for me to keep going. So, you know, seeing that many zeros behind videos that I make is, it's funny. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe these videos are actually doing well. And all the kind words and all the feedback as well is super helpful. So yeah, I'm going to keep on trying to going. Keep on trying to keep going. Great English. I'm going to try to keep going on making videos and getting some more content out for everybody. And I think that's all that I had. So yeah, just, you know, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for all the support. Like, it's funny, when I started working on this video, I had like 80 subs or 60 subs or something. So, you know, in the midst of me making all this stuff, climbing up to 300, like that's, you know, that's freaking insane. So yeah, I'll have a channel update video on that and like the streaming channel later, because obviously I don't expect everybody to be like, oh yeah, MGS, I can't wait to click on this video. But yeah, that's all I got. I'll check in with you guys later, and thanks for watching my stuff, and you have a great rest of the weekend, day, evening, or night.